And so every step of the way, they would ask for something. I would say, hey, I've got it. Or I haven't got it. They would say, okay, well, this is how you need to get it. And so they would even help and try to tell me how to get it. And so I never felt alone. So if there was a real um, positive thing that I felt was that I never felt alone throughout the process. I felt that anything that was needed, they would help me get. Any issues I have, they would help me solve. And that never changed during the entire time.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Visa to America success story. Today, I have with me Dr. Vince ParTAP. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. ParTAP. It's great having you.
Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak about my experience with Visa to America.
Excellent, excellent. So, thanks for joining us and taking time out of your day. So, the very first question I wanted to ask you is really simple. Just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, your name, where you're from, and what kind of E-2 business that you have here in the US.
I'd be happy to do that. So I'm Vince ParTAP. I've been a minimally invasive surgeon in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, for the last 25 years. It's sort of an unusual journey for me to say, hey, I'm going to try to get an investment visa to America, but it so happened that my secondary interest is in motorsports. So I've been racing cars for the better part of about 20 years, and in the last 4 or 5 years, I saw the opportunity to get involved in the business. There is a business in motorsport, and so I created a company here in Canada, and we went racing, and we did a lot of stuff here in Canada. I raced myself. I had people involved in the racing. We got drivers, and it was very successful. The thing is, Canada is a very small part of motorsport. America has one of the largest one of the largest presence in motorsports in the world. So it was a natural sort of thing for me to explore that opportunity. And I went down there and I looked at a few different racetracks and series and people, and I got so much positive response back from people that said, "Hey, we want to be involved in that. Like we'd sign up with you. You got a really good reputation that we built here in Canada." And then that started the process of me saying, "Hey, I want to do something over there." And that sort of led me in this sort of journey where I was thinking about, okay, you know what? I still got my practice. I still am a doctor. I'm still can do all this stuff, but now I got something that I can really sink a hobby that's passionate for me that I can get involved in, and that's sort of the start of the process of me getting to where I am today.
That's great. It's one of the things that I love about these interviews is I get to talk to people who have started businesses, and that's amazing. So that's quite the amazing business there. So yeah, tell us like what inspired you to go the E-2 visa route?
Well, that's a good question. So I obviously didn't know anything about this, but when you get involved in business, you want to make sure that, especially when you're trying to set this up in another country, you want to make sure you're following all the laws. You want to make sure that you're getting the right advice and that you're actually getting the right product that fits your needs, because I did some simple reading and I found out there's a myriad of options when it comes to visas and how to get there. But I want to do this right. I don't want to have I don't want to make any mistakes where you got to come back and do it again, or you sort of got involved with the wrong people, and it just I've been doing this for a long time in various businesses, and it really pays to have the right people on your side. And that's what started the whole process. So I looked at a few different online things and I said, you know what? I really couldn't tell one from the next. So I called up an individual who had gotten to uh, a visa to America in the past. And he says, I spoke to Joseph. And I must mention Joseph because he seems to be the face of this thing here. And he said, give Joseph a call. I go, okay, well, send me the number. He says, call him anytime. I go, what do you mean call him time? He goes, he never sleeps. Um, and so I made that call, and since then I've been able to follow this process. He is the one that has been instrumental in going through all the different types of visas and recommending the one that best fit me. So that's how I ended up here on these E-2 visa path.
Okay, very good. So really, it was a friend of yours. It was a referral that's how you learned about Visa to America.
Correct. And I usually find that that is the best form of advertising, and it's usually the ones that, when somebody has a real positive experience, or it has worked, then I will trust, because obviously I trust the person who's giving me the referral, and he's
Yeah.
obviously had a positive experience with Visa to America, and that really sealed the deal.
Yeah, you can trust someone who you know versus just a random Google search and finding some random company. So that's
Correct.
great. That's great.
Correct.
So so now let's talk about like transition a little bit to the interview process because I know a lot of our viewers that they hear the word interview and their palms get sweaty, that kind of thing. But tell us what the interview prep session, what that was like, because you had an interview prep session with a retired U.S. Consular officer. And so what was that like and how did that go about?
Well, again, when you mention interview, I think even for somebody like me who, been able to speak with many people over the last few decades, it still does create a little bit of anxiety because it is something new, and you're thinking, okay, you know what, I got to go up in front of, somebody to try to impress them, because that's what you're thinking the whole time. And Joseph was very clear. He goes, like, they're going to be really tough. Sort of the interview prep, like you said, the prior U.S. Consular officer is going to be a lot tougher than the actual person that's there. So he sort of
Mhm.
prefaced that. We had a 1 hour prep session. She was very good about identifying all the possible things that could be asked, but not sort of overwhelming you with it, right? Going through
Okay.
it methodically, saying, these are the most common things. She would ask the questions, I would provide an answer. Then she would go back over it and say, hey, you know what? That's a great answer. This could be improved. I would like you to focus on this. I would like you to focus on that. So, in essence, that was it was a very enjoyable 1 hour prep, actually, to be able to go through it. Even though I thought, okay, this is going to be really tough. And then at the end of it, she tells you, hey, you know what? You're going to be fine. You just need to do this, so forth, so on. Just be prepared with these few things. And so it turned out to be not overwhelming at all.
That's great. And what are some helpful tips that maybe she gave you for when you actually went to the consulate and did the real interview? What are some helpful tips that maybe she gave you that you can share with some others who might be watching?
Well, I think the most important thing that this is what I gleaned of this, regardless of how many questions, and Visa America is very good in sort of helping you through what could be possible questions that they can ask. The thing that helped me the most was when she mentioned, this is your business. You should know your business. You should know,
Good
who
point.
you are, and what it is you want to set up. No different than if you were trying to sell your business to a possible investor. That was the biggest help, because if I'm trying to sell my business to you, I'm going to be really passionate about it. I'm going to know everything about it. I'm going to know all my numbers. I'm going to know who my competitors are, things like that. And that's more natural. So if you look at it, if you think about it like that, we already know that. As a business owner or somebody trying to set up, we already know that. So that really made the biggest difference to me. And obviously during the interview process, it was a breeze.
Yeah, it seems like it was more of a mind shift for from being a nervous interviewee to being, hey, I'm the business owner and I know what my business is. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
little mind shift there.
Yeah, it was. It changed my whole perspective on it from the moment you mentioned that. Then all of a sudden there was really no anxiety because I do know my business, right? I do want. I'm just going
Exactly.
through a process of getting the right legal requirements to work in the United States.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of the interview, were there any questions that the retired officer, helped you practice that actually came up in the real interview itself?
All of them. It was amazing. All of them. It was she. I was. I almost had a smile during the interview, the actual interview, when I go, this was exactly what they said would happen. That being said, I only had, and maybe we discussed this for, I only had four questions. They really only asked four
Oh,
questions. I gave them the exact answer that I had prepped to do it, and then the final result was, you're approved. So I
that's
think it
great.
was. I think again that confidence in the prep, and then the way, I guess, the mindset change really
Mhm.
allayed sort of all the anxiety and fears that I might have had going into the actual real interview.
That's great. And now let's talk about like the actual process itself, the visa application process. So what was it like getting all the documents together that you had to gather, and how did Visa to America help you with gathering those documents and making sure they were completed correctly, all of that?
Okay. Well, the great thing about the process was the initial phone call with Joseph, right? Like, so it started with that, which was, here I am. I have this business. This is what I'm trying to do. He then said, okay, I believe this is the best route to it. We need to, and he was very good in sort of detailing then the process. So we went through that. He spent, I would say, at least half an hour to an hour on that first phone call, and it occurred very late at night on the Sunday. And he went through it and he says, okay, these are the steps. This is just for your benefit right now, so you understand. Once you make a decision and we decide to go forward, here's how it's going to go. Don't worry too much about it because I'm going to keep going over it with you all the time. And that's really the key. I think that really gave me confidence to know that, okay, you know what? I'm going to stick with Visa to America. I'm going to stick with Joe and I'm going to let them do the process because I got the confidence that they had done this multiple times, like probably thousands. They knew they knew it inside out and backwards. They knew everything that I was going to ask before I even asked it. And they help reduce this anxiety that you have when you're trying to go through a process. It is a foreign process to most
Mhm.
people. Hopefully we never do it more than once. So you want somebody who can take care of it. So he was very detailed. What he did was, and I'm just saying Joseph, but the rest of the team as well that he pulled in was at every step of the way there was contact. So a week later, hi Vince, how are you doing? Right? Have you thought about this? Okay. Then once the decision was made to proceed, then it's okay. Here's what we're going to do. And he gave me a list of the things. He says, don't worry about. Again, it's the same thing. Don't get worried about the amount of information we're asking you for. We're going to tell you what we need and when. We're going to tell you how long it takes to get there. And then that's how we proceeded. And so every step of the way, they would ask for something. I would say, hey, I've got it. Or I haven't got it. They would say, okay, well, this is how you need to get it. And so they would even help and try to tell me how to get it. And so I never felt alone. So if there was a real positive thing that I felt was that I never felt alone throughout the process. I felt that anything that was needed, they would help me get. Any issues I have, they would help me solve. And that never changed during the entire time. That is what I really, really appreciated with this process.
Okay, and it seems like you had a great experience, but I'm just curious to see if you're looking back on it, is there anything you would have done differently during the initial filing that might be helpful for someone out there who's like, I want to get involved in this, but you've had a great experience, but was there anything else that you would have done maybe a little differently?
For me, in terms of like I think that when I have questions, this is personal to me. When I have questions, I tend to ask it right away. I don't let it sit. I don't let it fester. So I would call up Joe and go like, okay, why do I need to do this? And then he would provide an explanation. I would so perhaps the thing that may be different that for somebody, I'm not saying for me because I tend to get in front of this, but for somebody, they may say, okay, I'm not going to ask any questions. I feel like it may be something bothering me, but I'm just going to leave it up to the professionals. I think they should ask those questions. Anything that you feel
Oh,
that you need to do, you should ask. So if I was that position, I wouldn't stay quiet. I would ask the people at Visa America, I'd ask Joe and all his colleagues, and they would be very happy to answer it. So I think if anybody has that fear that, okay, you know what, maybe I don't think things are going great, don't sit on it. Just ask them, and they'll be very helpful.
that is great advice. So anyone watching this, just remember, and when I kind of hear from this is that if you have a question, ask it. Don't worry about bothering Joseph or bothering Visa to America. They probably want you to ask these questions. And I think that's great advice to hand off to anyone who's watching this.
Yes, yeah. Again, I know how it is. You feel like you don't want to bother people.
Hmm.
Joe is like, please bother me. He goes, I'm up all the time.
Yeah, the man doesn't sleep. So,
Doesn't sleep.
so now let's focus on you for a second in terms of How did you feel when you finally received your E-2 visa approval? What was that like?
It's funny. It was a delayed response because I had to come back to work. So I went down. I did what I had to do. The lady said, "Okay, you've been accepted. You've been approved." I said, "Thank you," and I left. And I was thinking about, okay, I got to get to work. So that was very early in the morning. I think it all wrapped up about 8:40. I was home by about 9:30 or so. But I just started working. Joe calls me at 10 o'clock, which would be because I'm on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast. And he goes, I've been waiting for your call since like 2 hours ago. I said, well, Joe, I didn't want to wake you. He goes, so did you get it? I said, yes. He goes, I'm so happy. He goes, are you happy? I go, I am, Joe. I'm extremely happy. I
That's
just have
great.
this muted response, but it's funny that Joe and Visit America were the people calling me because they were so excited for me.
Hmm.
They were, and
Hmm.
that tells me that they were invested in
Yep.
my success. Right? I wasn't alone, and that was one of the best things out of the whole process. And I told her that the fact that you're calling me to ask me how things went, that was exceptional. That was exceptional for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And looking back at the entire process now, what was maybe the biggest lesson that you learned about the U.S. immigration system in general as you went through this process? I've never had to go through it, so it'd be interesting to hear your take on what that was all like and what the lessons that you learned.
I think the biggest thing for me is that when you're in being Canadian, we're very accustomed to. I've been to the States numerous times on, for the
Hmm.
last 20 years on many conference things like that. So you sort of take it for granted that, as Canadians, we just travel back and cross the border, right? We don't really have to
Yeah,
worry about, like sort of all the complexities that maybe other countries
sure.
may have to deal with. So, but when you get into, hey, this is now a legal framework in which I need to work, that is a
Hmm.
little bit um, it is a little bit anxiety provoking, right?
I can imagine.
Um,
Yeah.
it is. So, but the best thing about sort of what I saw was that even though the U.S. I realized that the U.S. processes so many people. I showed up at that interview and I could not believe the lines. And I said, "Is everybody here for the same thing?" And I realized, no, they weren't. But I was impressed because I'm a guy who loves efficiency. I was impressed on how quickly they moved everybody through,
Hmm.
how quickly they stuck to the process of how they were going to do this. That a lot of this depends on the background information that you provide for them. So having somebody like Visa to America, like I realized that now this was a very important decision for me to go with Visa to America because the amount of background that they had when they looked at it, I think that was
Hmm.
instrumental in getting me through an interview process that literally lasted 5 minutes, right? Of which I thought would be
Incredible.
way more complex. So
Yep.
I was it's a positive for Visa America. It's a positive thing that I'm complimenting also the U.S. side that they've done this so many times. I couldn't have imagined that their efficiency is so good, but the fact that you have somebody like Visa American side knowing how they operate, that
Hmm.
that was what opened my eyes. Say, okay, you know what? I made the right choice here.
That's great. And my last question, you kind of already answered it, but I figured this is kind of the capstone question is how important was it to work with Visa to America during the process? And, would you recommend them to anyone who's watching this right now?
I believe my success, and yes, some of that is my background and the obviously the business I wanted to provide, but Visa to America was instrumental in getting this. Not only getting it, but in record time. That's the other thing. And I think their ability to direct the process to help me get the information. I think like if any prospective person, I speak to everybody out there, if you just follow what's required, you get it to them in a reasonable amount of time, you will get this thing in it much faster than even you. I thought this would be a much longer process. And when Joe goes up, hey, they accepted it. Okay, now you got an interview. It was amazing.
You're like,
So for
wow.
anybody out there, I couldn't have done this without Visa to America. I don't even have to talk about anybody else who may be doing this. I 100% wholeheartedly recommend this team.
That's great. It sounds like everything you said was a great experience. So my last not question, but just we have a tradition that we ask our guests to speak in their native tongue to answer the question, do you have any final words of encouragement for viewers out there who are thinking about applying for an E-2 visa through Visa to America?
My native tongue is English. Born and
Oh,
bred,
it is.
British
Okay.
raised. My name is long story, but again, like everybody else, and most people that come to the Western Hemisphere, we're all immigrants, one way or the other, right? My ancestors would have come over 10, 12 generations ago, but I'm Caribbean by nature. I was born in the Caribbean,
Okay.
but the English tongue is 500 years, same as anybody who lives in
Same
America.
as
500 years of British rule, right? We learned to eat with a fork and knife, and that didn't come from anybody on this side of the Atlantic. Yeah, no, it's English. It's always been English.
very good, very good. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. That's usually the what we sign off as. So if your native tongue is English, then that's awesome. So,
Yeah,
well, Dr. ParTAP, thank you so much for being here today, and we greatly appreciate the time you spent. We know you're a busy guy, so thanks for joining us.
yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much.